Hey everybody, my name is Aiden Mattis. This is Thorn Bussy. That's Piper CJ, and welcome to the Lore Lodge. I think, are we actually? Can they hear us this time?
I have no idea.
Oh, good.
I wonder if they can hear her. That's the real question.
Yeah, that's what really matters.
Oh yeah, so sure.
yeah.
I'm Piper. I'm just gonna talk randomly until someone confirms whether or not they can hear me.
I mean, you could.
I know a lot of shit about a lot of random
hear
shit that will never be.
Okay, let's be fair.
Useful
We've seen
or
levels before
intentional.
when they can't hear.
That is very true.
So we're gonna wait for our YouTube audience to tell us whether or not they can actually.
Is that what we're doing? Okay.
Might as well.
They can definitely hear us. So, to give everybody a quick glimpse of what we're doing today, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to start off conversation about the FAE because that is a topic that is very commonly spoken of, especially on TikTok and YouTube, but very rarely do I see it spoken of in an accurate manner.
Also, just a heads up, they can hear everybody, surprisingly
Awesome.
enough. A guest interview Lore Lodge episode that went correctly technologically. Not my doing.
That's a first.
Guarantee you that one.
It's because I set up the stream.
It's because Piper's here. That's all it is.
So anyway,
So you're on my side, but let's.
Valid. Already, good lord,
Yeah,
this is an
geez.
interesting start to that debate, or whatever
All
it's
right.
going to be.
So the Fae often get misrepresented. It's a term that has a lot of gray areas and whatnot. We're going to talk about that. We're going to do some talking about Tolkien, which we've done before because we had Don Marshall on and he was phenomenal. We're going to be talking about Tolkien and his influence on the fantasy world, and then we're going to lead into a little bit of a discussion about world building in the fantasy genre because it is something that, when done well, is phenomenal, but is usually not done well. So the trials and tribulations of putting together a world for people to enjoy and to relish, and to talk about that here today, we have Piper CJ, and you want to give us the rundown on who you are?
Sure. I am a blonde with a master's in folklore. I write fantasy and I watch a lot of nerd shit. And sometimes people think it's cool and sometimes they don't. But I have a lot of useless knowledge bounce around here. I'd love to share it.
That's perfect.
That's why you're here, and that's why
That is why we invited you on. So my first exposure to you actually had nothing to do with your book. It was a video that you did. It was a Witcher related video when the
I'm sorry.
new
She
season
did a
first
Witcher
came out.
video, and I wasn't made aware of it.
I think I actually told you about it.
Don't think you did.
I believe
'Cause now I gotta
exactly what I did is I said something very flattering about her and sent you a video.
Well, was it on TikTok?
I've done a
was a
number
TikTok
of Witcher
video.
videos.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Was it
well-
the one that was taken down? The one where he said any real Witcher fan would have known this, and so I did my public apology.
see,
like, I'm so
it was
sorry.
that was the
if
one.
I had done it.
Now
Yeah.
I feel like a shithead because I would have had the Witcher medallion on. I would have watched some of the stuff beforehand. Now I'm gonna go after the fact to watch your video.
We can talk about The Witcher for a little
we're
bit
gonna
here,
have
for sure. Yeah.
Well, you're
So-
one upping me because it's like way thicker than mine, and it comes out. Oh my god, you're killing me, Piper.
So, let's dive into that though. Like, let's do some background here. Obviously you're a huge folklore and fantasy fan. When did that start for you? Like, where's this come from? Is this something you've always loved, or was this a newer development?
I have never been cool. Okay, so we'll do 10 seconds of it being dark, and then it'll get cool again. So just stick with me here.
Okay.
Grew up super fucking poor, which meant no TV, but that did mean my mom would read the Chronicles of Narnia and Tolkien and all of these amazing fantasy novels to my brother and I when we were just wee tots, and so my imagination exploded as a little kid. So I'm busy living in Narnia while my peers are watching cartoons, which, now I love cartoons. I've finally gotten to come back to that. But I've always been a nerd. And then at maybe 13, my uncle got me my first gaming console. He got me a GameCube,
Oh.
and I immediately became so good at Ocarina of Time. So, huge Zelda fan. And I used to do speedruns of Ocarina of Time, but I've stuck with the nerd thing. I've never let it go. I've stayed a nerd forever, and now people care about it. Like, now that I started talking about folklore on TikTok, suddenly it's valid, which is great. Let's keep that going.
Mm-hmm.
Why not?
That was like point for point, almost exactly the same as my experience growing up, except I was allowed to watch TV.
Yeah.
we had one.
Mine was like I wasn't allowed to play like games until high school because my parents were like, "It's not good for you." And I'm
One of my best friends
sure
didn't
about
see
that.
SpongeBob for the first time until he was like 16.
Yeah, that's excessive.
It's people. I had a friend in high school who was not allowed to watch Harry Potter
Well, here's the weird
Oh,
thing
yeah.
about...
I assume, yeah, was that a thing for you too?
So it would be. My parents were extremely strict, very religious. However, they read Harry Potter first, and they were like, "Don't be a witch," and then gave it to me anyway.
And
I'm not
look
sure
what you
how
went
that
and
slipped through
did.
the cracks,
Yeah.
What you went and did.
Well, just the weird thing about me with TV, though, is I would always, like, my mom would always be concerned about how much TV I was watching, but I was actively choosing to watch, like, Discovery, Animal Planet, and History Channel above, like, anything else. She would literally, like, say to my dad, she's like, I feel like he's watching too much, but he's just learning. So, like, how can I punish him for that?
Mm-hmm.
And I still do it. Like, most of my free time on YouTube is just, like, instructional or educational videos, because I'm a nerd. But anyway, yes. Going back.
How dare you expand your horizons in a way
It's
that
disgusting.
as a media format? It's disgusting. I'm pretty disgusted, honestly. We could end the stream now.
We should be ashamed. I'm so sorry that you had to witness me.
But I will say, for all of the many societal ills that social media has caused, this has been one that I think is really cool, and this is how we both found our niche. I think is that like you can, if you are somebody who's good at communicating information and talking about these concepts that people do have very genuine interest in, but it's just kind of hard sometimes to find a format that you like and that you can really sit down and enjoy. TikTok and Instagram and YouTube have definitely opened up an avenue there for people to, people like us, to do that kind of thing. And like you went from, God, what, you had like less than 200,000 followers on TikTok 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And now
when you and I met, I was at 50K because I was just making Witcher content, basically. And now I'm at 420, 425, something like that. But I thought it would be funny. Just I woke up one morning and the first thought out of my brain was about vampires, and so I recorded a video and I had not woken up yet, and it did so well that I thought, okay, so not awake professor, that's great, because that's the kind of me that cannot prepare. I have no thoughts in my head except it's already there. Here you go. And people have responded to disheveled, tenured, unbrushed hair, not awake yet professor teaching folklore. That's my niche.
And it's going well. You're killing it.
I would say so, yeah. Based
I
off
had
the numbers I just heard, good lord.
I had a couple people send me some of your videos, and they were like, dude, she's stealing your thing. And I was like, it's not my thing. Like,
Yeah.
Also,
information is free.
yeah, just go for it. Like, you can do that. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm encouraging her,
Yeah.
like, actively.
That's why she's here.
And the way we present information is so different. Like, it's not like only one person can be a history professor. Like, the way that you talk about folklore and the way that I talk about folklore is apples and oranges.
Yeah, it's
so,
very different.
Though I did message you saying, have you done Mothman? Because I want to do Mothman Monday. And then the night before I did it, you swept in and stole my fucking thunder.
Okay, in our defense, we have a fan who was begging us to do Mothman.
She's in the chat right now. We still have a Lore Lodge video, like, for Friday that I have to edit for it.
But that's like, what's...
Cursing is fine, right?
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Yeah, it's... We try to keep it mostly family friendly, but like PG-13 is the rating on this show we've determined.
Got it.
So I do want to kind of do a hard segue in here because we could obviously talk about this for forever. But speaking of folklore and things that people love, the Fae. What?
Yeah, so for people who are dumb and ignorant like me, what is a Fae?
I'm gonna let her take that one because she's got the master's degree.
Piper, what is a Fae?
Oh, not only do I have it, but I sure like to flash it because I've never done anything with it in the world except for show it on TikTok.
I feel you.
So I will talk to you, Tech Aiden, and
Yes.
describe Fae to you.
I'm ready to
Think
learn.
of Fae like the word mammal, where on the outside perspective, there's this baggage that comes with the word like Fae, where we think like, oh, the Fae are bad, or the Fae are good, or et cetera, or especially with Tolkien, which we'll get into later, people immediately will jump to like a sexy pop culture view of Fae. But Fae, like mammal, could mean could mean anything. We could be thinking of otters or elephants. We could be thinking of humans or a mouse. So Fae is such a broad category that when people think of the Fae, you can't just think of the Fae. Fae is just anything beyond the veil that interacts. Aiden, how would you describe Fae?
Yeah, so I do that thing where I take a very academic route to get here.
Naturally.
But so the etymology of the word fae is from fair folk or fairies, and so it enters English in that form around the 16th or 17th century, and becomes a very broad term as it gets out of Irish folklore. So the concept of the fair folk, the Tuatha De Danann, who are the children of essentially the children of the gods. They're this sort of in Christianity. They're in post-Christian versions of the story. They are more like elves almost, but
Okay.
we believe based on the names of some of these beings that they were the Irish pantheon of gods, because some of them are extraordinarily similar to both Celtiberian, Continental Celtic, and Brythonic traditions and names. The stories, Cernunnos, the Dagda, some of these other figures, the Morrigan. And that's one thing I've always found interesting about it, is how their names are also titles. But no, and we did a video a while back on the Book of Invasions, the Levigan and Erin.
Yeah, I remember you saying that a lot of times.
Yeah. So that's where this fair folk concept comes from. They retreat into the fairy mounds, and then.
So again, for those who are fully uneducated, what are the fairy mounds?
Fairy mounds.
Can I stop you before we go too
Sure.
deeply into this? Because I'm using the word fae from a global perspective, whereas if we do go into the etymology, we're thinking of words like, I use the example banshee, which comes originally from, we're talking about like Gaelic origins, but banshee can be thought of as a category of death omen. And so since the point of language is communication, I frequently argue that etymology does not matter in this context, because we're not communicating specifically on a linguistics level. We're talking to an audience from around the world. And so when I want to talk about a forest deity, I can use the word nymph, whether I'm talking about the Curupira in Brazil, or if I'm talking to someone in Greece, or if we're talking about Celtic lore. So when we go too deeply into, say, in Irish or Celtic or Gaelic or Welsh lore, I think we really pigeonhole ourselves. Whereas when you think about it as a category of those beyond the veil, then you can open up a global audience and then start discussing those within. So just if you do want to keep it etymological, we can do that, but I just don't think that's a fair.
Oh no, I want to talk about the broader meaning.
You're going
he
from
knows
historic-
me. I like to go into like the origin of the word.
Yeah, he's
Sure. Yeah.
his whole mentality is like, let's go let's start with where it started and then work our way to the present.
Yeah.
Because he's a history
And
person.
again, we can start where the word fae started, but not where the concept of fae started.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think that's where we're like, sorry.
Yeah.
That's where I was jumping in, where I'm like,
Yeah.
yes.
But
the word fae.
that was going to be my
concept
next point, is as we've moved from as we moved into a more global world, and especially with the advent of the printing press and the expansion of literacy, this term took on a new meaning where it became something to refer to everything beyond the veil. Everything from specifically fairies and elves all the way down to brownies and tommyknockers, and it's even made its way, as Piper was saying, into you can use fae to describe pretty much any supernatural entity. Not any, but I don't know that I necessarily consider like demons fae, but would you?
Actually, yes. So I would say that angels and demons are the lenses that we have used in religious terminology, so that when we are looking at fae from a religious background, if you're approaching it from a Christian perspective, for example, just to cherry pick a religion, you're going to look at a potentially fae encounter or lore encounter, and you're going to look at it in a way that your description won't be morally neutral. You'll want to put positive or negative energies onto it in a way that would give it a categorization of angel or demon. So as a folklorist, I would say that they are fae, but that's because I use fae as such a broad category. And we can talk about specific demons or specific angels and specific lore, but I keep fae Fae do be big.
Fae's like the kingdom level of the taxonomy here.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's a good way to put it. So at what point, I would ask this next, at what point do you at all, as a folklorist, draw a line between fae versus gods?
Yeah, so faes generally are lesser, and then we go into deities. So I would draw the line between, like, let's pull... I mentioned Baba Yaga the other day, because she's more of a death deity rather than our boogeyman lore. So when I was going into talking about fae or things that we've created for folklore purposes, and then how they can deviate where she could still be a category that we use linguistically to describe a boogeyman, but she is not one.
Mm-hmm.
The difference has to do with not only how the lore is transmitted, but also can you defeat her? What is her purpose? What is her origin? And when you're looking at like thousands of years of origin versus like, oh yeah, in the 18th century, after that guy like took a wife against her will, and then all of a sudden Celtic lore popped up.
Mm-hmm.
So when there's sometimes a specific origin that we can look at. How would you answer the question in fae versus deities or gods?
I definitely see them as separate. I think that and this I think the part of the reason that I personally in my breakdown of stuff, the way I divide it is definitely based on the to an extent the origin of the word coming out of Irish folklore, like we said. But I think that the key difference is exactly that they are lesser than gods. They do not have the power of creation, which is kind of where I put gods, is that they're in charge of something. They can take direct action to manipulate the natural world, whereas something like an angel or a demon can't take that same direct action in most cases, and that's why I put them lower. That's, in my opinion, as a from the theology background that I have, that's how I separate God from angels, if that makes sense. So I think I kind of look at it in a very similar way, is that it's a power level issue.
Would you consider a nymph to be a god or not in your definition?
I wouldn't consider a nymph a god, but I'm curious why you asked the question.
I consider nymphs forest deities because they have the power of growth and creation over the forest, and they're often affiliated with fertility.
Okay.
Not just with the forest and plants, but also with humans and interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just curious in the terms of power of creation, or even like our demon lore in terms of like incubi, human impregnation. That is creation. You can have that can be unborn out of that experience. So if we use creation specifically and intervention with man as our conversation for godhood, I feel like then we have to include demons and nymphs, right?
All right.
Well, I have two follow-up questions, and one of them was where do you put Nephilim on that level, just to really keep things on brand for us.
She seems excited about it.
Yes, and then I've got another follow-up to ask after that.
Take it away,
please.
Nephilim, I love Nephilim. Nephilim are a category of Cambion, so I would, in our Nephilim lore, when we talk about like Genesis 6:2 and the God finding the daughters of men beautiful, and then we have our race of giants, and then we have much later or earlier, so Epic of Gilgamesh, succubi incubi lore, all the way up to King James and Thomas Aquinas writing about succubi and incubi. We have them reproducing with humans and having very powerful offspring. So the Nephilim would be Cambion. And so if we're going to separate creation as godhood versus angels and demons, I think that Nephilim is a product of creation, right?
Yes. But through natural means. That's how I'm looking at it. It's not divine intervention. Because that would make us gods then, because we can create,
Though, okay, controversial. Like, let's start a fight in the YouTube comments.
We love those.
I would argue that I would argue that Jesus could be a Cambion because she maintained her virginity. It was a dream contact through a divine consummation that resolved in a very powerful entity and history-changing figure. And that wasn't the same creation where it was like on point, It was the dream contact.
I definitely see what you mean. I've never thought about it that way. And give me a lot to think about now.
It makes sense. He's one level above Nephilim. That's kind of cool.
Well, that's actually what led to Arianism, as Arianism, Pelagianism. I think it's Arianism, if I remember correctly. That
describe what you're trying to term.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. So if I remember correctly, it is Arianism, where the doctrine of Arius was that Jesus and the Holy Ghost are not themselves God. They're more like archangels. They're more like these supercharged angelic beings.
Yeah.
And this is actually, a lot of people think that the Council of Nicaea was convened for the purpose of determining the canon of the Bible. It was not. It was to address the Arian controversy, which a lot of people think that the church kind of starts with the apostles and then just kind of maintains from there. Not at all. There were dozens of controversies in the early Christian church where they were like, all right, well, Pelagius says this, and Arius says this, and Augustine says this, and St. Nicholas says this. There's a moment at the Council of Nicaea where St. Nicholas, where Santa Claus slaps Arius. And it's seen as, like, in the church, they see it as divine fury, righteous fury.
Yeah.
So he doesn't get in trouble for not, for not being meek and not, like, reserving himself. This is like a moment of Jesus with the whip in the temple driving out the money changers. So they're seeing this moment between St. Nicholas and Arius is like, St. Nick is just laying down the law. And that's one of my favorite stories of that early church period, is just because...
So I love that. And in terms of laying down the law, going back to my secondary question, specifically in relation to creation... when we're speaking of creation, what type of creation are we talking about? Because there's the biotic, whether it be sexual or just like kind of like with plants, it's a little bit more of an asexual production in terms of scientifically speaking. And then there are, creations that break the human understood Newtonian and relativity versions of physics. That would be deity.
You just gave us a fantastic segue into Tolkien.
Golden. But yeah, that's kind of my thought process. Is like, in terms of levels of creative capability, it seems like there are different levels, and it's like there is universal creation. There is, I don't know if there's something between that and us, or just like general,
minor deities and major deities.
Yeah. But like how would we stratify that? I guess.
I was just excited. I didn't know that you had a theology background as well. I had started my master's in apologetics and religious studies before I was stolen away by folklore and secularism. So I'm deeply... I know. I did like a year of that after I had just come off of my 3-month immersion in Augustinian just war theory, C.S. Lewis and the Inklings, Tolkien, and then I went straight to my apologetics master's and then to the folklore master's. They offered me a better deal in terms of research funding.
So what you're saying is what brought you away from religion was money?
Story older than time.
I'm just playing with you.
So this tiny... Yes, no. I had just tended to gravitate in my first year of apologetics courses towards demonology and occult studies. And Lewis himself said that he had what he called an unhealthy taste for the occult. It's so much more fun. And so the papers that I was writing were taking on a very fun tone. And I just happened to send one off to this folklore department, and they were like, yes, please come write papers like that for us. And here we are. But we were on creation and deities. So I was excited about our theology background, because we could definitely do an entirely different show about just theology and spin-offs.
You might need a special episode of the Weird Bible podcast for that one.
We do have a monthly podcast with Wendigoon. That's the Weird Bible podcast, and it's we sit there and we talk about weird stuff from the Bible. You would be welcome to come on.
That sounds like my jam. That's amazing. I guess I would ultimately boil things down into maybe 3 categories of Fae, where we've got like our lesser Fae that only interact, and then our minor deities, which could do things like create on a lesser level, and then we have our major deities, which can create on a global scale. But I would call them all Fae, because for me, Fae is just a way that we can communicate. So now let's go into Tolkien, if you want to talk about...
I do want to get one thing really quick, because I forgot to ask about it. There's a lot of discourse on the witch talk side of things, which I'm sure you've crossed paths with, where they throw the word Fae around in a lot of cases. Have you seen anything that's stuck out to you as like a common misconception or misunderstanding in the Wiccan and witchcraft communities?
I'm not on witch talk. I was brought into it a little bit when I made a video on Lilith, and someone said, "You're very brave to have made this video because this is a huge fight right now." And I said, "Oh, I did not mean to step into drama. I'm actively trying to not step into drama."
Is it the fight between whether or not Lilith is actually a biblical figure?
No, for me it was like the origin of, so Liliths would be like Lilith from our Screech Owl, and so I would categorize those more as like harpies and banshees if we're going to be thinking about them as a demonic entity, which is, we could cross over into succubi lore if we're going to keep going. I don't feel like there's any evidence to support that there is a goddess Lilith or a single entity Lilith. I would not want to discredit a practitioner. I would say that if someone's deity is Lilith, then maybe she is in contact with a Lilith, that in the singular.
Yeah. I definitely came across some of the same exact stuff with people saying, that Lilith was Adam's first wife, and I'm like, all right, you're welcome to believe that, but you do need to understand that it does not come from Genesis. Like, it's not. It's a much later version.
It didn't even come from the book
of Enoch, right?
Yes, until the 7th century. So we didn't have that. And a lot of people think that he was writing it as parody. So the idea that it's now taken so seriously, could she have been a Sumerian goddess? She could have, but it wouldn't have been in that context.
Yeah. What about with the don't thank the Fae thing is a very common one that I see around, which, depending on which sort of Fae you're talking about, there are some that you should absolutely thank, like a brownie. If they do something nice for you, you're supposed to be nice to them.
You can be nice to Fae without thanking them.
Okay.
Like, oh my God, this is so considerate. I love it so much. It was so nice of you to think of me. It's very different from thank you.
Okay, so you're taking a hard line on the wording here, not necessarily the sentiment.
Well, the thing is, when you are a human and you're interacting with a Fae, do you know that you're interacting with a brownie? I would be cautious, and so the language that I would use, I would err on the side of semantics, because if you're a layman, you don't know what you're getting yourself into.
Right.
So I'd be kind, always be polite no matter the Fae.
So I'm about to do it. Don't worry. So for the people who don't know what these things are, really quickly, brownies are, I categorize them under goblins, honestly, because goblins are generally seen as like a negative thing entirely, but I feel like it's a much better category as like diminutive creature that is mischievous. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just so brownies specifically are sort of you could almost compare them to house elves from Harry Potter. They are not enslaved. They will like in Harry Potter, house elves are magically enslaved.
Yeah, Dobby is quite definitively not a free individual.
Until he gets the sock. Oh my God, Archie's Dobby.
He's gotten the sock many a time.
Got my dog.
He stole my sock this morning.
Exactly. He's adorable though. He'll probably be up here at some point.
He will be.
But so brownies are a sort of goblin, in my opinion, that they will live in your home and they'll mess with you a little bit. They might like move your shoes, misplace your glasses. But if you for example, leave a plate of cheese out for them at night, then they might clean up your kitchen. Little stuff like that. So it's kind of thing that like as long as you treat them well, they're fine. But then if you treat them poorly, you get a situation like with gremlins, where they turn into a bit of a monstrous entity.
Now, here's my follow-up question. Why the no thanking, specifically?
That's what I was about to...
Okay, just making sure.
What happens, Piper?
When you say thank you to a Fae, it immediately implies that you are indebted to them. So, because I said, oh, thank you, they're like, awesome, cool, you owe me a favor. And when they're ready to call in that favor, you might not necessarily have a say on what they call it in or how they call it in.
Right. So, kind of like the law of surprise from The Witcher.
Got it. We all know how well that one worked out.
Very well.
This goes great.
I meant more the first one, not the second one.
All right, fair enough.
Second one we love. The first one, could have gone better.
It's I watched some background videos. Kings and Generals has a Warriors and Wizards channel now, where they talk about the lore behind things like Lord of the Rings and The Witcher and everything, which I think is phenomenal. I love it. I love Kings and Generals so much. fantastic YouTube channel. But yeah, so that's exactly the thing though, is the whole don't think the FAE thing. A lot of people seem to, like, I see a lot of people who are, well, why? And there's never really a good explanation on TikTok. It's always like, you're just not supposed to. And I love that you actually gave us one, because it's like, then it's the debt thing. So it's kind of like inviting a vampire in.
Got it.
Same
Christians saying,
idea.
where can I get one, and do they shovel snow?
What, a brownie?
Just a
That's probably what he was talking about. Yeah. I don't know that you could get a brownie that would have the stature to shovel snow.
Yeah, it could be a collection of brownies.
A large number of brownies. You also have to worry about being a hobgoblin. Do you remember the Spiderwick Chronicles? Was that something that you read, or was that before your time? Because I know it was. You're a couple years older than us, so I don't know who it really hit. Yeah, so shockingly, Piper is 30. Does not look it.
I would never have expected you were above the age of maybe 24 at most.
Yeah, it's.
It's the FAE youth, I'm telling
Exactly.
you. Don't tell the others.
What's actually going on here is she is one of them.
So I can't.
This is an elaborate ruse.
So we can't thank her for being on the podcast.
We can't thank her for the appearance on the podcast.
It was very kind of you.
It was very kind of you. It was very nice. But yeah, so, but to slip back into what we were doing with the creation question, what really sparked a rejuvenated interest in the idea of creation, and in Christian theology, the specific way in which God creates, was reading, I haven't finished it yet, but starting to read the Silmarillion. And you get the music of the Ainur and this creation process by which Eru Iluvatar is creating the world through him, through his themes, and the other deity figures singing along with him. And then you get, it's Melkor, right?
You keep going, and then I'll jump in afterwards.
Okay, I think it's Melkor, if I remember correctly. He sings his own theme, and it causes discord, and out of the discord erupts things that are dark and monstrous and whatnot. So that got me thinking a lot about, what about the Bible and the way in which God creates the world, and we get this creation in 6 days, God rests on the seventh, but the first day is before the sun is created, so how can we possibly have days? And like it launched this whole new way of looking at Genesis and creation, which I think was part of the reason that I ended up getting my minor in it. Penn State didn't offer a major, sadly, but that's one of my favorite things about Tolkien specifically, is you get such interesting bridges into Christian theology through works that he says are not allegorical. For a man that hates allegory, there's a lot of accidental allegory.
Maybe he's just covering his own tracks just to make sure that people don't assume things of his work that he maybe wasn't.
I think he was more concerned about the political allegory than he was the theological allegory personally. But Piper, you said you have thoughts.
I just love creation lore, and specifically biblical creation. The story the concept of speaking something into existence, ex nihilo, is something that I love so much, and it's part of why I hinge on the idea of names and the weight of names, and also the FAE and their value in names, true names, because when God empowered Adam to name things, he was basically giving him dominion over those things. And we get that from God himself in the creation lore, because he was speaking things into existence by giving them names. So, and when Tolkien does it through music, it's lovely. It's not as powerful as OG best-selling book of all time, the Bible. It's my favorite creation story as a folklorist.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. And I would give you that point then, that in your love for semantics. But I'm keeping half a point, because the point of language is still communication, and so in naming something, I need you to understand immediately what I'm talking about when I'm talking about something. So I might use the word angel, and it would immediately conjure an image in your mind, and that would make it accurate communication, even if it's not the technical, literal definition, etc. So I'm keeping half that point.
Okay. I respect it.
Should I pull out a scoreboard?
I will concede the point. Yeah, cool. I think part of the reason I'm so anal about semantics, I wasn't always. You've known me a long time. I don't think I was always as bad as I am now, but it's
hang on a second here.
Orwell's Politics in the English Language by Orwell, like, made me a radical extremist when it comes to, like, English language and definitions.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps to communicate your thoughts accurately, even if that requires communicating thoughts that are incomplete initially to find the accurate thought in which you're trying to piece together. Because I know, at least for me, half the time when I'm talking about something, even if I know the subject very well, but I'm exploring a thought or an area of it that I haven't done so before, it'll take me about 5 minutes of just kind of verbal exploration into my own brain to kind of put together whatever statement it is that I'm trying to say. Because I'll say something and I'll realize, 3 of those words were not the exact accurate thing that I was trying to think or say in that conveyed message. So I'd be like, wait a second, let me do this, that, or whatever. And then eventually I have a statement where I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I think that actually says what I was thinking. But
I'm 100% with Tech Aiden on this one.
Yes.
I'm taking back the point from Laura.
Oh, come on!
No, I'm giving half of it to Tech Aiden and half of it to me.
So we still have it.
We still do have the point.
And Aiden has the point.
Aiden has the point. It's fair.
The example I like to use for this is Forte. Have you heard this speech already? Or can I give it again?
Go for it.
Maybe you haven't. I'd love to give it. If I say, folklore isn't really my forte. Forte is Italian for louder.
Mm-hmm.
But you know I'm saying that folklore is not my strong point.
Yeah.
Fort is French for strong point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, fort is French for strength, but we're saying strong point, which is fort, masculine. And so folklore is not really my fort does not make sense. And since the point of language is communication, you'd have to go with folklore isn't my forte, because that's what people understand.
Right.
And so even though it's not the right word literally for etymological
But it is the one
reasons,
that people understand.
it's the one for communication. And so even though you're picking your way through it, that's my speech.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah, I just like to be extremely specific in my language. I don't know, it's probably a flaw.
I don't think so. I think it's good, especially if you're having a debate or a conversation that requires being precise and accurate. I think that's good. I also do think, because it's not the first time that I've thought about or been made aware of, I think it's really interesting that the colloquial understanding of certain words is sometimes so broadly changed from the actual dictionary definition of it, even if it's a recent thing that's happened or for like a long period of time. Like there are some words, I can't remember specifics right now, but I remember there were words that I would read in a book or hear somebody say, and I'd look up the definition just to kind of like try and understand a little bit better. And the context in which they used the word was totally different than the actual definition of the word. But then you do a little research and you're like, oh, that representation of that word over time has just drastically changed to the point where the dictionary definition is no longer accurate, which I think is really interesting.
That's why
I
it's
also
so
think
important to
this
update
is a
dictionaries.
beautiful segue into Tolkien and his word for elves. Like,
Go for it.
this is Tolkien changed what it means to be an elf, and this is a great point, because now when someone brings up an elf, or if someone today, if John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt writes a book and he brings up elves, we know he's going to be talking about sexy, tall, ethereal, beautiful, immortal elves because of what Tolkien did. And so even though that's not what elf ever meant, I would say that doesn't matter. I think that now we have a new cultural definition of what it means to be an elf, even though it's probably closer to nymph lore or angelic lore, or what he would have called them. And I know that Tolkien originally wanted to call them gnomes, and so I've been meditating on. I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, if 70 years ago he'd called them gnomes, would I today being like, gnomes, so sexy? Like, there's no progress there.
Could you imagine?
Totally possible.
That's I think what made Tolkien such a powerful and important author. It's not just the fact that The Lord of the Rings is one of the most beloved trilogies of all time. That's a given. But the way in which he just simply changed the landscape of fantasy literature from the more like almost sci-fi of Jules Verne, like the early fantasy works that you see. The sci-fi and fantasy have the same genesis, and then they just take wildly different paths during the 1940s and 50s. Then you get into like that's where you start seeing The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion on one side of things, and Ender's Game on the other side of things. There's a great, it's obviously people aren't going to love the interviewer in this case, but Orson Scott Card has a phenomenal interview with Ben Shapiro where they talk almost nothing about politics and entirely about writing and sci-fi, and I found it fascinating as an author. I was like, this is incredible, and he talks about how the main difference when you're publishing between fantasy and sci-fi is that fantasy has trees. And I thought that was one of my favorite descriptions, my favorite ways of differentiating between genres.
That's really like concise but very accurate and like broadly specific.
When you think about it, like what is the difference between Star Wars and Lord of the Rings?
Trees.
Did you read Lewis's Paralandria? He did a sci-fi series or trilogy. Yeah, so before Narnia, well, in the middle of Narnia, he did Paralandria, which is terrible. It did not age well. It does not hold up. There are trees, though.
Is it like... What do you mean when you say it didn't age well?
So, this is his concept of, like, a rocket that would take him to Mars. It was very much, like, confusing tin can. I could not at all envision what he was describing. And basically the main character accidentally gets rocketed to Mars, and they have an unfallen race of people. So this is still... Lewis loves his Christian allegory, so this was the idea of like Garden of Eden on a planetary scale.
Right.
And until the MC arrives, they don't have the fall. So the MC is the catalyst for the fall. But there's lots of trees, and it's very Narnia-esque. It's sci-fi. It's not good sci-fi, though.
Oh, God.
I feel like that's most sci-fi.
I listened to a quick episode. I'm trying to remember who it was from. It's slipping my mind at the moment. But it was a YouTube video about the world's oldest sci-fi novel, which was written during the Roman Republic period, basically by a guy who's his writing. I can't remember any of the details. I was barely paying attention, but the gist of it was there was a very popular genre of literature at the time, which was travel logs. And it was people would go travel to places and write about the magical things they experienced in Nubia.
So vlogging's not even a new thing. Good to know.
But much like with vlogging, they'd exaggerate everything.
Naturally.
So,
and it was a lot easier to get away with that back then.
Yeah, so, a baby elephant becomes this great beast that, is bigger than a man and stronger than a team of oxen. And, like, you get these crazy things and people talking about battles that never happened. That aren't recorded anywhere else. And this one writer, who his name started with an L, I can't remember it, he wrote his own travel log that talks about like an adventure to a foreign planet, and the people there are crazy, and like it was panned at the time. Everyone hated it, and apparently it doesn't hold up well either today. But the point is this, like the earliest sci-fi novel to ever exist is a mockery of an existing genre. That the guy got roasted for because people... Also, at the end of it, he says that you'll find out how they got home from their adventure in the next book, and then he didn't write another book. Such a...
Ultimate cliffhanger. What a
so
jerk.
rude, but...
Also, just wanted to take a quick second to acknowledge the fact that our chat is currently annoyed with us because I may or may not have said we do not recommend summoning Satan.
I would not recommend summoning Satan.
I wouldn't recommend it either, and that's why I said it. And yeah, so I just wanted to give some context of the conversation happening adjacent to this conversation.
I can't see any comments. Is this a YouTube thing?
It is a YouTube thing.
Ask those questions.
Yeah, when we get to the what time is it?
It is 7:49.
Okay, when we get to the question and answer section in about 15 minutes, we'll read off the questions we get to you. But yeah, so just I want to stay on this Tolkien thing though. One of the other fascinating aspects of this, first of all, is how much he was kind of bullshitting his way through the book. At first, just writing down whatever he thought of and then distilling it, which is like, I just think it's so funny that initially Strider was supposed to be Trotter and it was supposed to be Bilbo, not Aragorn, and like there's all these wild changes that he made. Seems like what I was told by some people who focus on Tolkien as their career was that he didn't really know where the story was going prior to the Council at Rivendell, and then he's like, that's where we're taking it, and then he had to go back and rewrite The Hobbit to fit into the Lord of the Rings narrative.
Nice.
It's really hard to find first edition copies of The Hobbit. I want one so badly.
Can I paint a picture of Tolkien?
Go for it.
Like, in the context of the Inklings, which are like C.S. Lewis and then his buddies, mostly of who were like theological drinking buddies, this writing group who would meet at this pub, and this is an oversimplification that will piss off the Tolkien community. However, he was a brilliant, wonderful linguist who was just very insecure. Mm-hmm. And so he just wanted the language, and so he had to create this world to support his language, and he kept bringing his story back every week, and the guys were like, would you stop bringing this up to us? Just like publish it already, you lame-o. We don't care. And he did this for weeks and weeks and weeks. It turned into months. It turned into forever. And so there's this piece of Tolkien and Inkling lore that Don and I have debated. It's my favorite story, and Don is, since it's not 1,000% verifiable, he's okay with it as Tolkien lore, but he won't stamp it.
I think I know what you're talking about, and I'm very excited that you're talking about it.
So the legend is that because he has this reputation of revisions, he just wanted to create languages, and then he built this world around it. He kept coming back with The Hobbit week after week, and they're like, we're so sick of The Hobbit. If you bring it up one more time, we will kill you. And he was like, okay, cool, never again, except for next week, and also the week after that, and the week after that. And so in this piece of Inkling's lore, what C.S. Lewis did was he said, hey, buddy, how are you? Would you like to go to a play with me in London? Pop on the next train down from Oxford. I'll see you there. It'll be a real cool time, pal. And Tolkien was like, for sure, you would never deceive me. I'm on the next train. And then Tolkien got on a train, and it was on his way. And meanwhile, Lewis, clandestine, breaks into his house and steals The Hobbit and ships it off to the publisher so that we could get The Hobbit. And then Tolkien continued to revise it because it was not that satisfactorily. You can't get a first edition. But like I said, Don has not stamped, but it is a favorite piece of my Inklings lore.
I like how Don is now the de facto, like, the king of Lord of the Rings. Like, his word is law, and I'm all for it. Like, he was phenomenal when we had him on.
I made that video, and so many people tagged him in it that I went on a preemptive strike. So I hit up Don on all forms of social media. I'm like, listen, Don, before you see my video, I have facts. Let me back this up. This is where I took my courses. This is where my professors. This is where I heard my shit. And so his first exposure to me was just me assaulting him through like email and Instagram and Twitter and any place I could find him so I could get out ahead of this TikTok video. Like, I'm not making shit up. I had a professor. Anyway.
I love the interactions between this community, this side of the content creation community.
Yeah, it's like a very interesting, but very like active, and there's a lot of things that happen in this little group.
For the most part, though, I've found it to be very supportive. I am not seeing. I have pretty much every attempt I've made to reach out to other people, other content creators, met with like, yeah, let's talk. There's no like, that's my topic, you can't talk about it. There's no, like, I jokingly said something to you about Mothman, but like, obviously I was fine with you doing it. Wendigoon, somebody...
I asked first.
Yeah.
Yes, no,
Wendigoon made a post where he was talking about how, like, he gets tagged in a lot of people who do, like, iceberg videos on YouTube, and then people are like, oh, this is Wendigoon's thing, you can't do that. And he was like, if you want to make an iceberg video, make an iceberg video.
Yeah.
Like, so it's a great side of the content creation community that I feel like there's just not a lot of necessarily competition, and people are much more interested in working together and helping each other build and grow and become better, and we can all share in this space rather than people trying to monopolize it. Yeah, I think that's fantastic.
Well, I think part of that is, and not to dip too far into my psychology background, but I feel like just generally it's because the whole community is a bunch of people who have wanted to talk about this stuff for ages. So the opportunity that somebody else wants to talk about it with them, they're like, please, yes, give me the outlet, I want it.
Exactly.
And like, I mean, we're in the same boat.
And
okay.
I
was going to say I agree completely. There's the part I think that we all went through the experience where we were uncool growing up, and so there's that part of us who was like, I was uncool though, so how come it's popular, or like how come people are talking about it, or how come it's not being gatekept right now because I suffered because I liked this. Like, my love for FAE led to me being bullied, etc. So how come now other people aren't suffering? So there is an element of that, but I think in general, thanks to TikTok, we're able to connect with other people that can destigmatize our interests in ways that makes it a lot cooler.
Yeah, I think
You
it's
go.
it's
You talk
fantastic.
now.
Well, I was just gonna say I think that this is a good opportunity to bring up the elephant in the room, which is that you just self-published a fantasy novel.
That's pretty sick.
Yep, The Night and Its Moon. There it is. I'm working my way through it right now. I have the super special prior to the first edition, because Piper emailed it to me before it was revised.
Don't show that to anyone, Aiden.
I won't.
Can he at least show it to
mine.
me?
It's mine. I'm keeping it.
I want to read it.
But no, it's a good book. It is a good book.
Oh, I believe it.
But I wanted to talk about it. I think this is a good way to segue between the two things, because obviously with Tolkien, one of the things that it was going on was he was a linguist. He wanted to build his language. The language he was building was basically Welsh, if it was cooler. If we're talking about like Quenya, and it's actually not
sexy Finnish, but yeah.
It's not a finished language. Also, it's like you can't write or speak it. You can translate into it, but it's not a finished language.
Fair. Someone will finish it.
But he went and did this whole world building exercise, which I've done. The book I'm working on, the one I showed you that I drew the map for.
Yes.
That one started off as me being in a class. I was in one of my religious studies classes, and I was like, you know what? I want to write a creation story in the style of Genesis. So I did. It was a writing exercise. But then I was like, wait a second, this is a pretty cool world. I'm going to draw a map for it. And then it continued on from there with, and I got that from, again, Tolkien. Wisely, I started with a map is one of the quotes that I think is just so concise, but also so useful from him. But that's the crazy thing is this entire thing that he did was basically, a world building exercise surrounding these languages. And since then, that kind of set the standard in the fantasy genre that you have to be pretty meticulous in your world building. Yeah. Like you will get called out if there are plot holes in your world building. It's so that is probably the one thing that I've noticed. So many people seem to almost overdo it, and you get like in the first 2 chapters of a fantasy novel, you get all these weird names and places that you haven't been introduced to, and they're trying to front load everything so that when you run into it later in the book, and also because when you're first writing, what you're doing is the world building. That's the first step. So when you're writing, you get into that world building space, and then you end up front loading everything, not realizing in your head that nobody else knows what you're talking about. So, for me, it's been a very deliberate process of like, all right, I know this exists, but the audience, the reader doesn't need to know that until it matters to them. So it's, as much as I'm excited to get to that part, I don't shove it in there yet. And I'm curious for you writing The Night and Its Moon, like, I know you have a map, so I know you started there probably. But what was the process for you, like when you started this world building exercise?
Sure. So, as a Lewis stan, when he was growing up, he was also a fucking nerd. He and his brother created this 400-year history for a world called Boxen, and they built it in a shoebox, and they just would write these little stories about things that happened in Boxen, and I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever heard. So, part of the reason I wanted to do rapid release was so that all 4 books could be finished before the first one came out, so that if there was any plot holes or errors in the magical system or things that happened in political history or geography, all 4 books could be done, and then I could go back and iron those things out. So if you're thinking of doing a series, I personally like the idea of having all of it finished, so there won't be plot holes. But the way that I handled it was just having my MCs be born ignorant. And so as they have questions, they can ask those questions, and those questions can be answered. So if you're writing as an omniscient narrator, you do know everything, and then info dumping is kind of required. But as an unreliable third-person narrator, I'm allowed to ask questions that the reader will ask, and they can be unraveled at the same time.
And did it work? In your opinion?
In my opinion, yes. I've been highly complimented on my world building.
Yeah, that was one thing I definitely noticed as I was reading the first couple chapters. It doesn't feel like I'm being told about everything at once and trying to synthesize all that information. It sounds like, you're introducing us to a world.
Yep.
Not
because
explaining the whole world.
they are also introduced to it. So as they step in, they don't know shit about their world. So as we are slowly exposed to the magical system in the Fae and politics and etc., we get to learn as they learn. That's how I would recommend doing it, because I started another fantasy novel recently, and the first 3 chapters. Do you watch Rick and Morty?
When I'm forced to.
I am in fact a fan of Rick and Morty.
I do not.
Okay.
I do not watch it of my own free will.
I certainly do.
I will address Tech Aiden then on this one, like starring a piece of toast and Gazorpazor and coming back for a second season, where you're just like, okay, this is nonsense. I'm nodding along. I'm here for it, but none of this makes sense. This was the track playing through my mind the whole time I was reading these first 3 chapters, and the book I was reading is a best-selling novel, and she's wonderful, and she will cry her way all the way to the bank. So who am I to say? But it can be really distracting when you're just like, none of this makes sense, none of it matters, and I'm sure that someday, if I reread this, I will care.
Yeah. To be fair, number one, I just want to say this is motivating me. Even though I'm literally in the process of selling my first script, it's motivating me to want to get back into the novel that I've left hanging on chapter 8 for ages.
Remember how I wrote a book and just didn't finish it?
Again, why did you not? The amount of times that I've been on...
Well, no, I started reworking the lore into...
the other one?
The new one.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know.
I hobbited it.
I liked the original one, though. It was good.
I'll probably
I wanted to
finish
see where
it
it was going.
point.
Yeah.
That's what I ran into.
Yeah, that's fair.
I got to a point 150 pages into this book, like Microsoft Word pages.
Yeah.
150 pages in, I'm like, I completely lost the plot at some point.
Yeah.
I have no idea where this is going.
Yeah.
There's a giant monster that crawled out of Tartarus, climbing through this giant forest ocean to destroy the elves, and then probably also human beings on the surface.
Yep.
I started writing it when I was 18. My goal was I was going to finish it during college, and it was based off of a Tumblr writing prompt.
Of course.
It was literally, write a story about a world in which instead of oceans there are giant forests.
Yeah.
And I was going to do a short story. It was going to be 20 pages long.
Yeah, and then it just kept growing.
And it did not stop there. I got to really screw with some of my friends' emotions by killing off one of the characters. Mm-hmm. That felt fun.
Yeah.
Now I know. Spoiler.
Well, you're not going to know which character or when it happens.
Have you read any of the books
I know the character I care about.
Because there's a character, a double character death that happens in chapter 3 that of mine that anybody who have had read it they literally were like, oh my god, because it's pretty brutal, and it's also like kind of sad because I love those characters and I'm like, you have to die because it's good for the story, but I don't want you to, and it's like that's the fun part of writing. But anyway, the point I was trying to make
is the murder.
No, it's getting to a point in the story where it's like, I love these characters, but you have to die because otherwise it's not a good story. I'm very heavy on tragedy, and also violence just is very prevalent in a lot of my stories, and it's just because it's good storytelling.
You should investigate that about yourself.
You think I should? I think it's. We'll get into that later. But no, real quick, what I wanted to say is in relation to what you were saying about the one book that you were like, there's. You didn't totally agree with some of the elements from it, but it was very successful. What I have found in my research in terms of films, music, books, anything like that, because I am both a producer and a consumer, you can't produce things without consuming a vast amount of things prior. What I have found interesting is the correlation between not all successful things are of quality. And obviously, Transformers, great example.
Not all things of quality are successful.
Exactly, but I think it's really interesting because
also, don't you trash Transformers? In my childhood.
It is entertainment, not art. But that's the point I was getting to is I think it's really interesting whether it's music, whether it's movies, whether it's books, when somebody can take the best of both worlds, when you can provide an entertaining story while also having like definitively artistic themes, capabilities, and things like that. Because there's who's a good example of an artist that combines both? In terms of musicality, just because...
I swear to God.
I'm not doing it. No, I swear. It's not that. But...
Better not be.
No, it's not going to be him. Relax.
Say it! Say it.
No, because that's actually not
He talks about John Mayer entirely
too much. Way too much. Way too much.
What was that? Wait. I need to know why the face. I need to know why the face.
Because he has a stigma. He's got very much. I guarantee you like Taylor Swift. Am I right?
I thought you were going to say Taylor Swift was all.
Oh
No.
It's not that I like her. I feel
Yeah.
that she is a good creator who understands her audience and is an intelligent. She gets audience psychology in a way that I admire.
Yes. What I was actually going to go to was Beyonce.
Okay.
Because she is someone who, like, quite definitively has just raw talent. She's great at what she does, but she also, if you look at the trajectory of her career, she modified whatever she was making to fit what was popular of the time. So she went for what's entertaining right now, and how can I utilize my skills to maximize the capability of both elements. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, if you listen to like early Destiny's Child versus what was her album when she married Jay-Z, and there was the whole cheating thing. Lemonade?
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
it.
if you listen to those two, they're completely different. And
Very
neither
different.
of them sounds like Halo.
Yeah.
So like it's
Yeah.
that's actually a really good example. I don't think about Beyonce all that much, but
Yeah, well,
she
she
was
doesn't-
very prevalent in our childhood.
She hasn't put out a lot of music recently, that's why.
I don't blame her.
Yeah.
She's
Also-
fabulously wealthy. She's probably just doing things as she pleases.
Yeah, she's living life
You
now.
know,
Also,
go her.
I feel like Adele is another good option. She's incredibly good artistically, and I don't think that she really like cultivates or curtails herself much to the entertainment value. But it just so happens that like because she's so good and so gifted musically, she has an innate understanding. And I mean, I'm just coming at this from an external perspective. She could have producers that are influencing decisions that she makes within the creative process to, fit things better. But you have a point. Go ahead.
I would say the opposite of your point. I mean, that Adele is very talented, and that rather than like Beyonce or Taylor Swift, or I've never been to a John Mayer concert, but they do both what the public wants in terms of production quality and then also their raw talent. Whereas I'm told that if you go to an Adele concert, her music is perfect and beautiful, but it's quite boring because she does just stand there and sing. And so she does not tailor towards the psychology of the
Very
audience in the
technically
same
perfect.
way.
Well,
Yeah, and if you're thinking about what the people want and giving them what they want, I'm not sure that like she's giving them what they need.
That's
Whatever.
I gotta agree with Piper on this one. I think
Yeah.
what made Adele so like interesting when she came out back in like 2011.
Yeah.
Man, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, when she first came out, it was like Rolling in the Deep was not.
That wasn't even her first album.
I know, but that was like the big one.
Yeah.
You know, that was the one that launched her career.
Yeah.
That was not Justin Bieber. That was not Taylor Swift. It was not Maroon 5. It was not, Christina Aguilera. It was not any of the stuff that was popular at the time.
Yeah.
It was its own genre, and it broke into the top 40 without asking. Just completely like paved over everything and became this super special new pop music genre.
And because you made that point, and because we brought him up, I have to
Oh,
address
good
the
God.
fact that he is, in fact, a very similar, because John was never part of the mainstream. He always was tangential, but the man has 7 Grammys. And the funny thing is like, I
It's
love...
an impressive amount of Grammys.
I know. It's the same as Prince.
I know.
Like how many grandpas?
It's pretty impressive, right? So, but the reason... So I started getting into John Mayer a year ago, first through his interviews, before I understood, or like we got into his music, because I'm really big into guitar. I love, playing guitar. I'm not amazing at it, but
He's
I'm working
actually
my way
pretty
there.
good at guitar. He's entirely
anyway.
self-taught. He's way
So-
self-deprecating right now.
Besides the point. What I found interesting about him, especially in terms of his interviews, before I even understood how incredibly good at guitar he was that he both understood that he was outside of the mainstream. He always was making music that was never popular or like of the main entertainment factor. And he also had a fundamental understanding of the audience in terms of, I know that when I make this song with 4 to 6 chords in it, it's more than likely going to be a lot better than the 124 chord monster that I write for myself. And so like
That's a lot of chords.
yeah, it's him. He just
There
does
even
that.
that many chords?
I have no
I
idea.
don't think there's that many chords.
But he may have been being a little bit hyperbolic in that statement. But the point is that like, but I'm sorry, you've listened to Wait Until Tomorrow. He hits notes that don't exist. It's but the point being is that I think it's really interesting when an artist is capable of compartmentalizing and being totally okay with the fact that it's like, yeah, this thing is for the people because I know they're going to enjoy that. this is for myself and the niche audience who cares. And I love that because we right now are that. And I think that's fun.
I wonder sometimes if we'd be more popular and more lucrative if we just did what the people wanted.
What do the people
want?
What do the people
you
want
already
of you?
do what the people want.
Well, yes, exactly. I modify my body to please our rabid fan base. But it is 8:10. I want to get ready to move to the
question time.
Q&A. But Piper, is there anything you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
Yeah, great question.
Obviously within the bounds and constraints of a show that has an hour and a half runtime.
Well, we just went on a 20-minute tangent about music.
That's true. That's true.
I think it's open game.
Well, y'all did. I mean, I contributed. This is, I think, probably the best piece of literature in the history of... No. Okay, so... What I want to do really quick is pep talk people, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it. Sure.
So there's this huge stigma with self-publishing, where people are like, no, I don't want to do it unless a traditional publisher picks it up. And I think that's so silly. Why should a crusty old corporation decide whether or not you get to tell your story? So I did this with no resources, and it hit #1 bestseller in like several countries, all the Barnes & Noble lists, and on Amazon for a couple days. So self-publish. Do what you want to do. Tell your story. I will have cooler announcements regarding whether or not, because the thing is, and I had this argument with my friend where she said, if you self-publish, you stigmatize yourself, so then this traditional publisher can never pick you up. I don't think that's true. And I'll tell you more on that in a different day.
Okay.
I'm excited to hear more.
Only so much that can be said. This is how I feel when people ask me questions about Freemasonry. There's a question I can answer on another day, and then I won't.
Yeah. So shall we transition to the Super Chats?
I think it's time to go to the Q&A. Just for anybody who is new, the way we do this, obviously, since Super Chats are paid, we answer those first. And if we get through all of the Super Chats and there's time left over, we answer questions that are not Super Chats. But we feel like it's only fair to the people that are, monetarily, financially supporting the show, that they get first priority on that end.
That's a respect.
You got some weird flack for that at times, and I'm like, would you prefer I ignore it? Like, what
no, these are our major deities, our minor deities, and our lesser fae.
There we go. Deities. Perfect.
Golden.
Okay, so what do we got?
The first one we got is from Alex Halpin for $10. Thank you very much. It says, hi, hot people. You guys are the best. Love watching live after milking the cow. And I believe that, in fact, is in relation to an actual cow.
I hope so. Either way, I'm flattered.
Yeah. They followed up with a $20 question saying, what is the most dangerous fae?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a very complicated one. I mean, I have my classic answer. I mean,
you go first.
100% I go with whatever the hell this flesh pedestrian nonsense is.
Yeah, that's valid.
This creature, because like I think about it, and like this is a motif throughout the world in folklore from all sorts of different groups across the continents, that all of them have something along the lines of something that is taller than humans, with these long, slender features, that's super fast, super strong, and likes to eat people. And that, in a lot of these traditions, they have superhuman abilities, such as they're very good at ventriloquism and mimicry, and they live either in the forests or underground in caves, and it's the whole missing 411 phenomenon that we talk about all the time. That basically these creatures allegedly will kidnap and eat people who get too far off the beaten path, and they will never be heard from again. And I find that terrifying personally, because there's like no... It's the fact that in almost all of these traditions, it gets you before you have any possibility of knowing it's there. I think that's what makes it so scary to me.
I have a different answer.
Go for it.
I have a sharks versus hippos answer. That is the most dangerous if you find it. But if we're going with what are more people going to encounter and die from or be harmed from, the numbers in terms of like, what is it, 4 people die from great whites per year versus however many die per hippos. I could have picked house dogs or something. Like, what makes it the most dangerous fae? Is it the number of fatalities annually? Is it the number of like souls lost? Because then I'll quote again Lewis as a Lewis stan. In terms of demonology, he has this quote, murder is no better than cards if cards will do the trick in terms of like ways you can wander off the path into a fey realm or demonic realm, and again, demon is a word that comes with a lot of baggage, but I just think it's a lot easier to stumble into death or stumble into danger, not with the Slender Man category, but with 1,000 other categories. So, I think all fey are very dangerous.
Okay. All of them?
No.
Are there any benevolent ones that you would be like, this is one that you should be friends with?
There are almost none that are like, I'm solely good in the way that humans deem good. Almost all fey are morally neutral at best. And some of them are generous, and some of them are funny or silly. But in like what we consider to be good, like would I think that their actions are like, oh yeah, I can trust you 100% because we have the same definition of morality, I would not say that. No, I don't think there's a benevolent fey in that way.
Got it. Great answers.
I would say so.
Okay.
Next question's from Captain Alien for $4.99.
Love you, Captain Alien.
I'll thank a brownie. Please send one. I'll do the research.
We just said not to do that.
was also talking about like summoning Satan a little earlier, so.
Why is it that I make all these videos and I'm like, you shouldn't do this thing, and then people are like, I'm gonna do it.
That's 100% of my comment section. If I'm like, oh, if you don't want a succubus or incubus, onyx. Like, what is the opposite of onyx? Trying to summon succubus. Like, how do I deal with you people? I'm trying to save your souls.
The number of people that I'm like, it's okay to say skinwalker. You're not supposed to say the Navajo word for it. And people are like, what's the Navajo word? And I'm like,
I know.
I'm not telling you.
They have Google, do they not?
Apparently.
Or literally everything where I'm like, this is what you do to prevent against vampires. I'm like, cool, but I want to be turned into immortal, sexy vampire. Like, you won't be. You will be a blood bag and a pile of pulp. There is no sexy lore outside of pop culture, pretty much. Anyway.
As the guy who's
trying
most...
to manifest the sexy vampire.
As the man most commonly victimized by Wendusi comments, I gotta agree with you.
To be fair, you feed into that just as much as they do at this point.
I didn't originally.
But at this
Originally,
point...
I was like, you should not have relations with the Wendigo. And
yeah, but
it became such a meme that...
If you can't beat him, join him.
If you can't beat him, join him, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I mean...
The
more of us...
Yes,
I did. I did. I have descended into madness. We are simply living in a Shil-Gorath-esque realm of nothing makes sense and everything is uncanny.
That is the Lore Lodge, ladies and gentlemen.
Somebody commented on one of my recent videos. They were like, "Is this Aiden's descent into madness?" And my response was just descent.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, no. It's his reveal of madness.
My brother in Christ, we are already here. What else we got for questions?
Did you know that I was utterly insane? Yeah. Plaz for $10 says, Shin Megami Tensei has a lot of different folklore and mythology representation. All supernatural entities are denoted as demons, but have various classifications. Lots of fae representation.
Oh, yeah. No, I would agree with this in a way because demon is a lens that we look through things. And so if you want to approach everything with caution and suspicion, then in that way that everything would be a demon with greater or lesser powers or abilities.
I love this because we just filmed a video on demons. He was taking a nap for most of it, so I don't know how much he absorbed.
I pressed the record button.
You pressed the record button. We've got a couch right there, and he just crashed.
I got maybe 3 hours of sleep last night, and I spent all afternoon underneath a rusty old truck.
Yeah,
so.
but we were talking about demons, and as you can imagine, I went into the etymology and like the history and all that, and it's we talked about mostly like we didn't really go over the Catholic era that much in the video because I
can't wait until you start just ripping into Catholicism.
Oh God, there's a lot there, but there was this kind of, and I think part of the reason that Fae is such an interesting and intriguing term is because demon went through kind of the same thing where everything was a demon if it was outside of the approval of the church, and this. I can't simply only fault Catholics for it. The Eastern Orthodox did it too, and so did the Protestants in Northern Europe. So it's not just Catholics. I will give you guys a pass on this one. But it was this thing that just like the church, rather than going into the specifics of, well, if you have a commenter who's like, the shaman in the forest told me about elves, they were like, those are demons. They just don't talk to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not even just religious folk, it's suspicion in general. I think the natural instinct is like, I don't know what's right, but I know what's safe.
Yeah.
And what's safe is to stay home and not do anything ever.
I mean, that sounds accurate to me.
Well, not if you're home and
Yeah.
a radon problem.
Correct. As long as you're not in the basement,
Okay.
you're fine.
Sure.
Listen, I don't know why, but there were a lot of commercials about radon when we were kids, and it is burned into my memory. I thought radon and quicksand were going to be severe problems I had to deal with in adulthood.
Well, to be fair, radon is a lot more prevalent, especially in the area in which we live, than quicksand
Yeah,
is.
radon is much more of a problem than quicksand.
Yes. Quite definitively.
Yeah.
What a shame. Next is from Plaz again. What?
How bizarre.
Oh, how bizarre. How bizarre. Fantasy Wreck, The Phoenix Odyssey by Sean Boyle. Novel tie-in for his fantasy game, Embers of Pyre. It's so post-APOC, it wraps back to high fantasy.
Interesting.
I've not played this, nor have I read it, but I love fantasy that's gone so far. So there are a few different categories of movies, TV shows, books now that are like, the world has been bombed into such a nuclear holocaust that we're so far in the future that we're back into medieval times. Not even like pre-medieval, like prehistoric.
Yeah.
Almost like Horizon Zero Dawn, or
I haven't played it.
but okay, that's fine.
I will try it. I've got so many games on my list right now. Yeah, it's and that's,
if you don't have time for a long plot RPG, then yeah. Okay,
I do have time, especially because I stream 3 nights a week. So if I can do it on stream, I can do it.
You can literally make it part of your job.
Exactly. That's. God, what was I gonna say? I lost it.
Prehistoric
You want to say
futurism?
the question again?
Oh yeah, that Atlantis.
Well done. Oh god, we're back to this. We're really hitting all the stops tonight.
I don't know how much of my Atlantis content you've watched, but that's my entire theory with it. Is like there was a advanced by comparison civilization.
I'm familiar with the concept. I haven't seen your videos, but I'm with you on this, actually.
Yeah, it's basically that humanity had advanced to the agricultural stage, perhaps even the seafaring stage, and then some cataclysm wiped us back to the Stone Age.
I think there's a reason that lore like this resonates with us and that it keeps popping up throughout society. And for me, the most common explanation is the reason that we're all telling this story across all of our cultures is because it happened. So
exactly. Thank you.
I love that little addition. That was great.
I love talking about Atlantis with folklorists and fantasy authors and everything because like it's so much more fun than archaeologists. Archaeologists are like, we don't have evidence, and I'm like, I know, but what if we did?
Yeah. Just because it's not there yet.
As a grad student, I taught an undergrad class that was material culture, so it was a folklore and archaeology overlap class, and it was. I was a teacher, I was the TA, and I was so stressed every day. I was like, okay, guys, this is what we're doing because archaeologists do not approach things like folklorists do.
Not.
And, no. So me up there, like, we're gonna go in with an open mind and open heart because you cannot disprove lore of the folk because once they believe, they're like, yes, we fucking can. Here are the facts.
Right. Now, to be fair,
great time for Piper.
To be fair, I do want to say we are generalizing here. This is a stereotype about archaeologists. We've had some fantastic archaeologists on the show who have been phenomenal.
My specific experience.
I just wanted to throw the disclaimer out there.
Yeah, just in case.
We have a good friend of the show who's a very open-minded and he's very much a skeptic, but he's also like willing to have the conversations, and I think that's great. And obviously, we're talking about Mini Minute Man. So do we have more questions?
We do. History Daddy for £5.
Thank you, History Daddy. That's like $6.
Thoughts on Andrzej Sapkowski, H.G. Wells, and H.P. Lovecraft in comparison to Tolkien?
Did you
also
just mispronounce the
absolutely.
author of The Witcher's name?
I did, because I didn't know how to pronounce it. I love the show. I haven't looked into the books yet. Bear with me. I'm working my way back. I went show, game, I'll get the books eventually.
It's the wrong direction.
Well,
it's fine. Listen, no, we're not going to gatekeep experience. If he approached it from any direction,
I
approached it because Henry Cavill existed in it, and now I'm following that trail.
I gatekeep solely when it's him.
Yeah, that's fair. You're
Okay,
allowed to do that.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Gatekeep
I
your
simply,
friend. I
I
agree
simply
with that.
must make fun of him at all possible
Yeah,
opportunities.
you're allowed to do that too now. You're a friend.
If you're not doing anything next Saturday evening, we're having a roast of myself and Aiden.
We're gonna get like destroyed.
Oh, we're gonna get torn apart.
Oh,
It's gonna be live streamed.
I mean, she's gonna get into me about the John Mayer shit, just like everyone else.
Live
is, I
streamed on
guarantee.
this channel.
Also, self-published. Completely agree with Piper. So,
Yeah!
addition there.
Already love History Daddy. Here we go.
History Dad is great. He was on the show last weekend.
Yep.
Do you want to take the question first?
I don't. I think she means you.
I know. Do you want to reread it?
Oh, I'll take it. You compile your answer while I go.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you were talking about Sapkowski and Witcher and all of these. I don't. You listed about 3 of them compared to Tolkien, and Witcher tackles monster lore so much better than Tolkien ever could because Tolkien invented, whereas Sapkowski builds on what exists. Is that where you would go with it as well?
Yeah, I don't know as much about Wells, so I can't really speak to him much.
I can't really speak to Wells either.
But I know that he had quite the impact with War of the Worlds, considering everybody panicked and thought it was real. Don't do radio broadcasts without telling people it's fiction.
I love that. What a performance art for the masses.
In the
Beautiful.
nuclear era, can you imagine how bad it could be?
Right.
You can say.
Yes, I can, and I live for those chaos goblins. Okay, you answered the question, but
Right, yeah.
Tolkien did not have good lore. He invented lore, so he did not build on real world lore.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I had the question yet. So here's the thing. I do love The Witcher. I have not managed to get through all the books, but I have been doing my reading. Unfortunately, I have to do it on my phone because I don't have the money for physical copies at the moment. I completely agree with Piper. I think he's building into he kind of took a middle ground, whereas Tolkien was inventing this entire world that had never existed before. Sapkowski, is that how it's pronounced? Yeah. He took all of these different things, and I think it's very pronounced with, like, for example, the Striga in season 1 of The Witcher.
Yeah.
I'm going with the show because it's what you recognize.
Correct.
So the Striga, trying to think of the other monsters he fights. The Leshy in season 2. Yep. These are all existing pre-created folklore monsters that in some cases he definitely does alter them a little bit in certain cases to fit the story and the narrative, but they are, he's not putting all of his energy into building the world. He's putting his energy into telling the story.
In the interest of self-plugging, I just recently did a video on my TikTok on the best representations of folklore in pop culture and really bad ones in pop culture, if you're interested. I'm Piper CJ on TikTok for those in the comment section. There's a video that tackles good lore in pop culture. That's all. Carry on.
Yeah, that's a series we've been thinking about doing is Supernatural.
Yep.
The TV show, just going through and like ranking each episode.
Oh yeah, are we gonna?
Can I just drop a quick bomb on Supernatural, like opinion-wise?
Sure.
Yes.
First 2 seasons, brilliant folklore.
Fantastic.
They changed writers and producers, terrible folklore. The show picked up and took off and did astronomically well. It is one of the the only shows to gain more followers in the second half of its viewing or something, etc., etc. Doesn't make the folklore good, but the first 2 seasons I can stand behind those.
Oh, the first 2 seasons were phenomenal.
Yeah.
It is 100% what got both of us into this kind of thing.
Season 1 through 3. I even include 3 into it, even though
the demons were way
they
scarier.
Took the spotlights off the Impala sometime in season 3, and it pisses me off still to this day. It's a very niche thing, but I loved the spotlights on the posts beside the windshield, and they took them off in season 3 because the director didn't want them there, and they kept them off. And I hated it.
Yeah, my opinion was always that it got bad after season 5 when Kripke stepped away for a season or 2, because we got a season of way too many feelings and a season of dick jokes.
Yeah,
and then I don't think it was savable after that point.
I like Misha Collins as a person.
Yeah,
I didn't enjoy Cass as a character.
Oh,
I enjoyed Cass. I enjoyed Cass in seasons 4 and 5. Oh, where's she going?
She got so excited about a point that she has that
she lost her AirPods.
She lost her AirPods.
It happens.
It happens to the best of us.
There we go. They're back.
Please make your excited point.
I was just gonna say, I love Misha Collins. I love Cass as a character. Terrible angel lore, terrible show.
Oh,
in
God.
That point, but he's still a great. He seems like the coolest person, and also Cass as a character was hilarious. So I think we can separate. These two things are great. The lore was still awful.
I will never recover from Enochian being a language. Because Enoch was written in either Hebrew or Greek. We don't know what the original was.
Honestly, Aiden, I'm surprised that is your tipping point, because it had gotten so crazy before that I like. It's almost like I'm reminded of seeing someone tweet about Dr. Dolittle 2, where his wife represents him in court, and she was like, they'd never allow that. That's a conflict of interest. And like, he talks to animals. Is your problem with representing in court? So that's Enochian, that's your limit.
I wouldn't say that one was specifically at my limit, but that's the one I couldn't recover from.
Yeah,
that was
understandable.
I was definitely like getting to a point where I was like, oh, come on. The Mark of Cain. Like, it just I loved the show. I love the actors. I love the characters. But oh my god, by like season 13, I was like, please, just end it so I know what happens.
Once they brought Mary
Aiden
back,
could probably take this one though, because they canceled the show. They kept canceling it and then giving them only 3 to 5 episodes to undo the cancellation. So every time it was canceled, they would end the show with the apocalypse, and it would tie everything up nicely. So you studied film. You can probably speak more to what happens when a show is canceled and then uncanceled in 3 episodes. So they just had to do some really, really stupid shit.
I feel like they could have easily gotten away with not doing that stupid shit if the network had just stopped trying to cancel the show.
Well, yeah, that's the problem, is the network. The CW...
Cancel culture must stop.
When the CW does things right... When the CW does things right, they do it right. When they don't...
All 3 times that's happened.
What
are
the
your
3 CW references?
My CW references of things that are, like, good are, well...
The first season of Arrow.
Yeah, first season of Arrow. The first, like...
DC fan. Okay, yep.
Yeah. I'm going to bring
He
this
is a
up
big
here.
DC fan.
So, yeah, most of Smallville, the first 5 seasons of Supernatural, and so far, as of right now, I haven't finished the 2nd season up to where it is yet, but I'm not going to lie. Superman and Lois is way too good of a show.
I am just glad you didn't
CW.
say something good about Riverdale.
Oh, no.
If you had said something good about Riverdale, I would have had to end the show.
The people who are on the show know how chaotically just disastrous
Somebody
it is.
pointed out to me that Euphoria is M-rated Riverdale.
Basically.
And I have seen exactly 7 minutes of Euphoria, and not from the same episode.
That's all you need to
but
say.
That was... I thought it was a good point.
The only episode I've seen is the first episode of the play thing. Sorry, go ahead.
I disagree with the point on Euphoria and Riverdale, mostly because Euphoria is allegorical, and I think it's actually quite well done if you're looking at it from an allegory standpoint.
All right.
Whereas Riverdale is openly chaos, which people love. Give the people what they want.
I do enjoy open chaos.
I've only seen 1 episode of Euphoria. What is it allegorical of?
There are so many things, like let's take the character who, since you don't know the names of any characters because you don't watch the show, there's a character who dresses very, very slutty. She is
Cassie?
our domestic abuse. I think it's Maddie. Cassie's the blonde one.
Yeah,
Maddie's
I think so.
The brunette. So I'm talking about the brunette. She's the one who suffers from domestic abuse. And so what they do is, while domestic abuse victims are generally portrayed all covered up, hoodies, turtlenecks, she bears everything in the idea that she's covering by showing, because I have nothing to hide. And so there's all these layers where anyone who enjoys engaging in allegorical description and symbolism in TV and media has had so much fun with Euphoria. So there are 2 levels to enjoy it on. If you just want to watch a teen show, that's fine. But if you like symbolism, it is meaty. And that's not something that I think I can say about the 2nd season. I think that was just really, the 1st season was really, really fun and psychological and could sink your teeth into it. And then once they got money, I think money often ruins creativity because what drives something is production rather than artistry.
Yep.
Yeah, which I think is what happens to Supernatural.
I think it's an interesting point that you refer to that as allegorical, though, because with the psychological background I have, generally abuse victims will go one of 2 ways, specifically
referencing. Couldn't figure out that word for a second there.
It's like obfuscate.
Obfuscate. I did it. There we go. You did it too.
Because I've been practicing in the mirror.
Yeah, no.
I say it enough times that I got to be able to say it right.
But I do find that interesting because it really does seem to go one way or the other in terms of sexual abuse victims. They either will like shut down in that element, or in some unfortunate cases, it becomes a validation element of themselves. Like that's obviously generalizing here, and that's not the only like thing for that track.
No, you're so right. I'm specifically referencing how they're portrayed in media. There's pretty much one way that like domestic abuse victims are portrayed on TV, and you can spot one right away. Like, oh, her husband beats her on TV. We know this because of her turtleneck and the way that she's wearing her hoodie.
Yeah.
And so the way that the show took things.
Trying to hide the signs.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah, hiding in plain sight, hiding by revealing. I know we're running out of time, so let's do it.
I want to make sure I get to all the super chats.
We only have a few more. Next one is from saying, 1, we want Archie. 2, Piper, you're absolutely lovely, and I cannot wait to read your book. It sounds and looks amazing. And then 3, Stinky Men plan the meetup.
Oh, okay.
So we'll do that.
Archie, where are you?
He's over here. He's just hanging.
Come here. You've been requested.
Oh, the poor boy.
Anyone who reads the book, by the way, will be getting the super special first edition. It's only on the shelves for a little bit longer before it comes off for revisions.
It's at Barnes
and
and
for
Noble,
other
right?
reasons that we.
Barnes and Noble, right?
Oh yeah, it's at almost every Barnes and Noble in the U.S. and it's on Amazon. Which is also there are like 4 authors self-published who've gotten into Barnes and Noble.
It's a pretty huge
That's
accomplishment.
awesome. Yeah. I'm gonna be picking it up this week.
Come here.
But you will be getting the version with typos because I did not think anyone in the world would read it. So, hi Archie. So the version that you buy at Barnes & Noble right now is the super special first edition. That's the version with typos. If you want to wait, you can get the version that's beautiful and perfect and flawless. However, typos are collector's edition.
Just get both. Why not?
Get both. Oh my god, I love that. Yes, get both, please.
The next was Captain Alien for 1999.
Well, thank you, Captain Alien.
In all caps, why can I not summon a brownie? I will take one for the team.
Well, okay. To be fair, part of it is that they're not really usually associated with summoning rituals, right?
No, they aren't. But in terms of if you want to summon, that's part of it. So you can summon the Fae.
Mm-hmm.
You can open yourself up to the Fae and basically unprotect yourself, open up the veil, let it all in. But the thing is, when you summon the Fae, is you don't know what will greet you. And so you might be picturing a brownie, but what greets you instead is from like Pan's Labyrinth style, very scary. Do you see the eyeball monster that I want you to be seeing right now? He's So if you want to do a summoning ritual, you might get a brownie. You might also get this guy.
Very similar to the issue of Ouija boards. People are like, oh, I'm going to use this to contact my dead aunt. And then they get, Balthazar, the demonic entity of ancient Babylon. Like,
you should be honored if Balthazar contacts you, because that is a very powerful entity to be reaching out to your Ouija board.
He's so tired.
Oh, Archie?
Yeah.
Archie's very tired from doing absolutely nothing today.
I know. No, I was running around with him earlier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I talked to him
He's
about.
being very good. He's,
Yeah, he's a tired
big
boy.
yawn. There you go.
The last one is from Captain Alien again from 1999, saying, speaking of the Skinwalker, the last time I drove through the res for work, I said the Navajo name for it about 20 times. Immediately had an uneasy feeling.
What?
I mean,
you brought this upon yourself.
Really likes to take one for the team here.
He's going to stop showing up one weekend, and we're just going to know. We're like, all right, okay, he's gone.
Get yourself a blue snow shovel, please. We don't know it'll work.
He has been dragged to the other world.
Yeah. What?
So the way in which you open up yourself to the Fae, so you can speak the Skinwalker's name 20 times, which obviously you've already done, so you're fucked, my friend. Goodbye. But it's not just him that you invite in, because you are now open season. So your luck just might get worse, and your life might just get strangely and slowly worse, and things might get a little hard. Sorry.
I will say, when I first started talking about this stuff on TikTok a year ago, there was a period like in July and August where I was not sleeping well. Like, and I stopped talking about specifically skinwalkers and wendigos so much, and the bad dreams went away.
Yeah.
And I started talking about it more, and the bad dreams came back. And I was like,
Oh.
ooh.
That's a weird correlation that you don't like.
I don't like that.
I filmed that video and then didn't post it, where I was like, all right, guys, the Fae are after me since I've been giving away their secrets on how to protect you from them. It's sitting in my drafts where, like, my luck got a lot worse after I started my how to protect you from the Fae series. Like, shut up, Piper.
You can't just be telling them.
Yeah.
She can't keep getting away with it.
What time we got here?
It is 8:40 and we have
8:40.
one more super chat.
We have one more. What is it?
That's from Plaz for $20. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Class.
Super chatly reminder to go check out Demon Gate High, a TRPG and webcomic also by Sean Boyle, author of aforementioned Phoenix Odyssey. Modern fantasy with lots of mythology, folklore, and anime references. Also Wendigo.
Did he say anime?
Yes. Oh, careful. Calm down. Where's the antidote?
What is the anime reaction?
Nothing.
There's
Are we pro anime? Are we anti anime?
I'm neutral. He's very animosity.
I got bullied in middle school for not watching anime.
So now he's.
That's
just
not how
like-
that's supposed to work, Piper.
No.
It's not supposed to go that way.
So now he's just locked in on the anti-anime train.
I will say I watched a
You
couple
are-
episodes of Attack on Titan and it was very well done.
Yeah.
I just can't.
Could I talk you into like Castlevania? Like
I've been considering watching The Witcher one.
The Witcher one is just a movie. It's a minor commitment. It's Nightmare of the Wolf is so good. It's so good. I would stake my reputation on you will enjoy it.
Okay, all right. I will, because you have given it such a huge endorsement. I will take a look at it, and I am open to changing my opinion about anime. I just have some mental scars associated with being 13.
I just have a tough time getting past the like hyper like dial turned up to 11 emotions and reactions.
The hypersexuality can also be a bit over the top for me. Too.
Haven't encountered that yet. It's more along the lines of just like the way people speak. But yes, we
There are very different production styles, and I lived in Asia for several years, and so I feel like I'm a neutral party and just describing that there are different production styles in the way that you produce something in the Eastern Hemisphere and the Western Hemisphere.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a better gateway for you might be Western anime, where Nightmare of the Wolf is and Castlevania is. So if you don't like anime, then Eastern Hemisphere anime will not be up your alley. But if you want a gateway drug anime,
I really dig the Miyazaki movies.
I do love Miyazaki.
Those are great.
I think the problem is people were trying to shove like Neon Evangelion and Sword Art Online down my throat. No, I was not prepared for.
No, Nightmare of the Wolf is low commitment because it's one movie, and you've already backed yourself with Witcher lore. You can do this. I believe in you, Lore Aiden and Tech Aiden. You should watch it together. Cuddle, like record it.
I mean, yeah, that's fine.
As well.
We'll do
We were
that.
going to do that anyway.
Yeah. Also, we got one more from Captain
boy.
Alien for 1999.
All
It says, "Fear not, I'm driving through the res again this week. Stay tuned for part 2."
If you hear anything knocking on your back window, no, you didn't.
Yep.
That's one of the things we need to do. There's a couple of Navajo creators who do stuff about skinwalkers and Navajo folklore that I want to have. I want to have on, but I've had a hard time getting them scheduled. Like I keep trying. It's just,
it's tough.
I think part of it's the time difference because most of them are out in like Mountain Time or Pacific Time.
Well, we're 13 minutes over time, so we should wrap it up.
All right. Well, Piper, let's run through what's social media, what's your website, what's your book.
Yeah, so I'm Piper CJ, and that kind of tells you all you need to know. So I'm Piper CJ on TikTok, Piper_CJ on Instagram, PiperCJ.com. And this is my book, and I think it's really good. But then again, I'm biased, so don't trust anything I have to say about it. And I'm a folklorist. Oh wait, more paper to flash. I toiled in graduate school for this, so I want to show people that I did this. Anyway, that's all.
All right. Well, I gotta say, I'm very glad you came on. I enjoyed this podcast episode so much.
This was a great episode. I really enjoyed it.
This is definitely one of my favorite ones that we've done.
Yeah.
Everyone, absolutely go check out Night and Its Moon at Barnes & Noble, or if you want to wait for the, any
revised edition.
Yeah.
Or get both.
Or get both. That's go for it. It is a good read. It is a genuinely good read, and there's a lot of themes in there that I think you don't get to see in much modern fantasy. So I think it's definitely worth it. It takes there is a tack taken to the storytelling here and the character perspectives that you don't see in a ton of a ton of the popular fantasy stuff.
Well, you've sold me.
Okay, good.
So I'm gonna get the misspelled version and the correct grammar version when it comes out as well.
All right. Well,
Thank you so much.
thank you so much for coming on. We'll be in touch about future stuff, and I definitely hear any updates about the revised edition and the next There's gonna be 4, right? 4 books.
Yep.
Total.
They're all done, and I'll have news for them later this month.
There's novellas as well, right?
Oh yeah. Mhm.
And are those on the website? Where can people get the novellas? Or are they not released yet? Okay, you can't say. Got it.
In theory, if I were to say something about anything, it might be that there'd be like an exclusive edition by one distributor that might include a novella in the back if you buy it from them. But I, of course, couldn't say that,
Of course,
so
yeah.
I didn't say it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But-
Naturally. Yeah.
All right.
Very
So there are
much
going to
so,
be 4 books total. Look out for them. Is definitely worth the buy. Or if you can't afford to buy, are they in libraries?
They are. Just life is so funny. They are, yeah.
So you can get it at libraries.
There we go.
Perfect. All right. Well, Piper, thank you so much for coming on, and
Very much so.
for those watching, thank you for staying with us, for entertaining our conversation, and we will see you next week. Thank you for coming to the Lore Lodge.
By both Aiden's, by folklore fans.